Hello, everyone. I'm Angela from Suffolk's Early Years team, and I'm going to ask you before we start to put your hand up in your room if you believe in an inclusive setting. Yeah, everybody's hand will be up, I know, because you all believe in an inclusive setting. Okay, I just wanted to clear that up, that I know that about you before we start. I know that before we start talking about unconscious bias. Whilst I just get the PowerPoint ready as well, I want you to think, picture something in your mind, just quickly. Picture an airline pilot. Create a picture in your mind of an airline pilot. Um, and another task before we start going through the slides, actually, I'll go to the first slide because it's on there. I want you to answer this question. A father and his son were in a tragic car accident where the father was killed. The ambulance brought the son to the hospital and he needed immediate surgery. In the operating room, a doctor came in, looked at the little boy and said, "I can't operate on him. He is my son." Who is the doctor? And please choose to pause this screen at this point if you'd like to look at that question again and have some time to consider the answer. Okay, pause has stopped. What happened? I know that somebody there will know the answer because they attended a session, but just in case they didn't, the answer is the doctor was the child's mother. And we often don't think about women being surgeons. Of course, we know that and accept that, but when we start exploring our mind for what information we pull out, it's strange what comes up, and we don't often think that a surgeon is a woman. It's just interesting information. So, a little tiny bit about me. I've travelled and lived and worked overseas for a good long time. I've worked in international schools overseas and a few years backpacking. I was in, oh gosh, 7 years working in various countries in Africa, a couple working in the Middle East and a couple working in Romania. And the only main reason I really share that with you is to say I've been lucky enough to have some less common experiences, which sort of qualifies me to begin having this conversation with you. I've had some experiences that are out of the ordinary, shall we say. So now to what we're doing today, we're going to just sort of ponder and explore biases, mostly unconscious bias, but I'm going to start with conscious bias. So we all have conscious biases. We have things that we're biased towards. And here are a couple of mine. White van drivers. I have become biased. I have developed a bias towards white van drivers, and that I should probably update that actually, because it's less likely to be white van drivers these days than delivery drivers. But I do find them rather annoying. I have a bias as well towards people who double dip. Oh, I find that annoying. And for people that vote for the other party, whatever that may be. But there's some of my conscious biases, and I've been, as I've been delivering this, the workforce development team have shared a few of their biases, and they are often traffic related, it seems, vehicle related. Ivana doesn't like, or is biased towards people that don't use their indicators. And Joe is biased towards people that drive too close. And Cheryl generally is biased towards lorry drivers. So think sort of that program Room 101 where you put things you don't like on the conveyor belt and it gets dumped. Think about what you'd put on the conveyor belt. What are some of your conscious biases? So pause here to have a little discussion about what some of your team's conscious biases might be. So come out of the pause now, carrying on. These biases can cause us to treat people differently. They're negative examples. But we also have positive biases, and I'm positively biased towards all things Australian. I think Australian version of Married at First Sight is much better than the English version, and same for MasterChef Australia. And when I meet an Australian, my energy probably raises a bit, and I'll smile wider and be a bit more welcoming in my demeanour. So we have these biases, beliefs that affect our behaviours, but we also have unconscious biases. So let's start to delve into unconscious bias. These also affect our behaviour, but we're not aware of them and the effect that they're having. And they're based on our experiences or lack of experiences in many cases. They're likely to be more positive towards people who are more like us and more negative towards people who are different from us. We often fear difference and the unknown, the unfamiliar. And they're different from our conscious prejudices and our thoughts of being inclusive. They're completely separate from that. And they can affect our behaviours in major ways, but also quite subtle ways. For instance, the tone of voice, our body language, and our facial expressions. They develop through our socialisation experiences very early on in life and continue to develop and change throughout our lives. And it doesn't have to be first-hand experience, but could be formed through stories we read in the media, things that we're presented with by others. We assess and judge and respond to people based on these formed beliefs. Here's a couple of examples of the effect of unconscious bias. Quite unbelievable. Anyway, let me read them. Studies have found that doctors who believe they have no race bias have been found to give black patients less pain medication than white patients with the same injury. Yeah, I know. That's crazy. Orchestras had a small percentage of women musicians. All orchestras, unless they were a women's orchestra. But anyway, so when hiring was based on blind auditions where applicants played behind a curtain and their gender not known, the percentage of women hired doubled. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And later studies had to remove the sound of heels walking across a hall because you could often identify the gender by the sound of the footsteps. So can you go back now and bring up again that image of an airline pilot that you created at the beginning of this? And can I ask, was it a man or a woman? Was the pilot black or white or Asian or mixed race? And what does that make you think about your unconscious biases? The majority of people will have thought of a white male as their pilot. Not everybody, but the majority. So you can pause there and discuss that if you'd like a little bit. So now I want you to picture another image. Think of an image of Ethiopia. Give you a moment to pull that up in your mind. Ethiopia. Did you picture something like this? a very strong image of famine and starving children that will have been formed by media representation. I bet you didn't think of Ethiopia like this. That is also Ethiopia. It's called the Ethiopian Highlands, this specific area. And it's absolutely stunning and beautiful and lush. But we don't have knowledge of Ethiopia in this way. I've never been to Ethiopia, by the way. I just have been told, and I've looked it up. Okay, we're going to do a little quiz now. So I'd like you to best don't discuss this yet, perhaps. Oh, I don't know. I'll leave it up to you. You can discuss this in teams or in pairs, but write down the numbers 1 to 9, and I'm going to show you 9 images, and I want you to say if they are in Africa or not. That's all. You don't have to say where they are, just Africa or not. Remembering that Africa is a continent full of many countries, but are these images in Africa or not? What about this one? This one. This is image 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, I'll go back to the first of those. And we'll give the answers. So pause here if you'd like a little bit longer for this activity and to share those 9 slides, but I'm going to give the answers now. So yes, this picture is Africa. It's the capital city of Ghana. It's called Accra. Accra in Ghana. Yes, this image is Africa. This image is actually somewhere in India. It's not Africa. This image is Africa. It's rural Malawi. This image is Africa. It's the capital of Kenya, which is Nairobi. This is Nairobi. Next image. This is not in Africa. This is somewhere in the Philippines. This one is actually somewhere in China. But on image 7 now, this is Africa. It's Luanda, the capital city of Angola. Image 8 is Africa. It's Khartoum in Sudan. Looks quite a lot like the Middle East, like Dubai or something, doesn't it? But no, that is Sudan. And image 9, I left this one till last. It is Africa, and it's the capital city, Addis Ababa, of Ethiopia. Again, Ethiopia. So did some of these surprise you? You might want to pause here and have a chat amongst yourselves about those images. They're quite surprising, aren't they? I think. And then bearing in mind those city images, I want us to have a little chat about this book now, Hand of Surprise. It's a lovely book and it's well worth repeated reads. It's really lovely, beautiful images. But who does it represent? How many of the Black children in your settings have experienced a life that's represented in this book? I would like to guess that most of the children that have come recently from Africa to you have probably come from a city or a major town, and not necessarily rurally, but equally most of the black children in your settings, I would think might be second, third, fourth generation English, British. So who is this book representing? And we do need our books to represent children's real lived lives. And so just something to think about, to ponder. And I want to tell you a little story here about one of my unconscious biases that it's recently become conscious. I know better now. So the children in a setting I support in Ipswich absolutely love it when the manager puts on a favourite song and they all sing along. It's not a song that I would have associated with that manager, the manager of that setting. The reason for that is she's black. And she's given me the right to talk to you about this, by the way. But why on earth would the amount of melanin, colour in a person's skin, define what music they like? But I had that biased belief. I had a belief that generally speaking, black people like a particular kind of music that this doesn't represent. So it's an unconscious bias made conscious thanks to Pam. And so, yes, thank you, Pam, for that story. And so how are these unconscious bits of thinking affecting us? Could it be affecting who we hire? Could some children be getting more or less of your positive or negative attention? Do you respond more to certain children during a large group story time? Do you have different expectations for certain children or certain staff? Do you set up particular activities for different groups of children? For instance, do you make sure the bikes are out when you only have girls going outside? And how might you and your staff be passing on biases in your settings? They are formed so early in our lives. And how can we find out how we might be responding due to our unconscious and mistaken, probably, beliefs? How can we find that out? And how might you address how to deal with some of the biases passed on by parents unconsciously? What about the All About Me booklet? I think that becomes increasingly important. Finding out as much as you can about families as early as you can becomes really important. What questions can you ask families to help you to understand things you currently don't know about? What families, perhaps due to their cultural experiences, believe it's very rude if you touch the head? Yet it's often seen by practitioners as a way to show affection. What families think it's offensive to show the soles of the feet? Yet often we ask children to sit properly, meaning legs crossed in front. And did you know that for some people, pointing with one finger is rude? It's important to think about some of these things as well in relation to home visits, which I think have become increasingly important these days. Which families might require you to take your shoes off? Need to be aware of some of these things and be very conscious in our thinking. So what can you do to deal with unconscious and eliminate unconscious biases? We can care about it, our internal motivation. We can make a commitment to reflect on practice together as a team. Study your provision and observe each other. I read somewhere that it's easier to see a possible bias in somebody else than it is to see it in yourself. So observe each other. Raising awareness of this as an issue, yours and others. Work hard with your team to develop inclusive practice. Develop your All About Me document and find out about families. Broaden the scope of visitors to your setting. If you've got, say, the fire engine coming in, ask when you're organising it if there's any members of the firefighting team that could represent inclusion in some way. We're still in Suffolk, so that may not be possible. But anyway, more about that in a minute. Do some reading and learning, finding out some research. Step out of your comfort zone and into the unknown. I understand that there are some multicultural events that happen in town. Go along to one or two of them if you can, outside of your comfort zone. So yeah, look for multicultural events you can attend and signpost them some to the parents, because encouraging them to take their children possibly. Select books where children can relate and see themselves in the pages, which we've discussed with Henda's Surprise. Have responses ready for dealing with difficult situations. For instance, a parent that might come in saying, I don't want my son dressing as a princess. Oh, I did that in a male voice. That's already an unconscious bias, isn't it? But you get the picture. So everything we're doing all the time is teaching children sometime. And you might not mean to be, but they're watching you. So let's influence them as consciously as we can. Think about what you're doing to create a truly inclusive provision where children can grow and be their unique selves. So just a little bit now about the Suffolk experience. We're a little bit isolated over here in this beautiful, beautiful country. No major roads go through Suffolk on one way to, via Suffolk to get somewhere else. You have to detour to get to Suffolk when you're travelling through the country. And also people stay put here. It is so beautiful that people stay put. And we don't have many people coming in from outside. There's a greater level of the unknown here. And it means we have to try a bit harder, particularly if you work in a very white and rural setting. It's an increasingly multicultural world, a changing population, and you may feel Suffolk is part of that developing multiculturalism, and it is, but it's slower here. It's minimal. And how are you going to prepare the children in your setting to be a part of that world, to be a global citizen and minimize their unconscious biases? And I want to share another little story with you now. So this is, I worked at Lincoln Community School for a couple of years in Ghana, in the capital city, Accra, at an American international school. We were working, this one year, we were working on a topic to find out more about Ghana. And a drummer, there he is, who used to teach drumming as an after-school club, invited my class to his village called Kokrabiti. And it's a poor fishing village. And we got the bus and we went along and we had a really lovely day visiting wood carvers. The Actually, I can show you some of the pictures. Visiting the wood carvers and visiting their kitchen for a local restaurant. We saw the fishing catch come in. And we also spent some time with children from a local school. And we exchanged some songs. We sang some songs, they sang some songs. And on our return to the classroom, we talked about the trip. And one child made a comment that the children from the other school were dirty. I thought, hang on a minute, they weren't dirty. And we got the photos up and had a really good look. And these are the actual pictures of the actual children who are supposedly dirty. So take a look at these pictures. You can pause these as much as you'd like to have a really good look. I'll just show you the same pictures again. Oh, too far. So they're not dirty. I can't see any dirt on these children, but I can see that their clothing is a little bit raggedy, but they are not dirty. Those whites couldn't be any whiter. They've been, they've lost their shape a little bit from so many washes, perhaps. But they're not dirty. And I really appreciate the fact that I was able to have this discussion with my class. That particular young man now doesn't have that unconscious bias. Oh, too far. And I love that, yeah, that I was able to affect that. Makes me very proud. But he was about to keep that unconscious bias because the children look a bit raggedy, but they are not dirty. This little girl at the front here, we see the back of her. That collar could possibly do with a needle and thread, but do they have a needle and thread there? Who knows? But she's clean. The dress is clean. So that was, if you have these, engage in these discussions, we can deal with unconscious biases. And then I know you'll have seen this slide before, something very similar, the difference between equality and equity. Equality is where we offer children the same, but maybe they need something different to be equal. And some people often say, I don't see colour, I treat everyone the same. As I heard on an Oprah Winfrey once, that's like saying, I like to liquidize my salad. Ugh. Each piece of salad is unique and needs to be treated according to its own unique qualities. I don't want a mushed up piece of lettuce and tomato and cucumber. I want them all to be distinct and unique. So salad is unique. And yeah, it's a bit of a silly comparison, really. But children and families are unique. You are unique. Your setting is unique. Suffolk is unique. And I know you believe in equity and social justice, and I know you recognise your responsibility as professionals working with children. I know you do. And I know you all put your hands up at the beginning saying you believe in an inclusive provision. So let's work hard to develop that. And then Maya Angelou, an absolute heroine of mine, said, do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, do better. So let's help each other to ensure our unconscious biases are minimised and our behaviours closely align with our conscious wishes. And the early years team are developing some materials to support settings around diversity. So do ask your advisor about how they can help you. But from right now, you can start to ponder a little bit deeper. Thank you.